We are going to look now at the plight of what we're calling Generation COVID. Unemployment is at its highest in almost 5 years, and it is younger workers who seem to be bearing the brunt. The number of people on company payrolls is down 726,000 on pre-pandemic levels, and almost 3/5 of those are under 25. A knock-on effect has seen a surge in young people moving back in with their parents. Research by the personal finance website finder.com suggests as many as 10.5 million in the UK have moved back home because of the pandemic, more than two-thirds saying that they expect the move to be long-term. Also, particularly difficult for young people who were perhaps just graduating from university or finishing an apprenticeship and trying to find their first job and start that new and exciting chapter in their lives. So today we are going to talk about the under 25s, as I said, Generation COVID, and hear from one 21-year-old about the impact that the pandemic has had on her and those that she knows. We've also got two career experts on hand to advise on the best way to tackle these times of uncertainty. And of course, what is now a supremely competitive job market. So if you are under 25 and you are worried about your future, or someone in your life is, then text us anything you'd like to ask our career gurus and we will put the question to them. The text number is 87222 and you start your message with the word Times. You can tweet us at Times Radio or email studio@times.radio. First of all, though, I want to talk to Gurpreet Narwan, who's economics correspondent at the Times. We have got Erica Scarth, who's a career resilience coach working with Young Women's Trust, Claire Donaldson, who's head of People Ops at Give Grad a Go graduate recruitment agency, and Hannah Walton. I mentioned the 21-year-old distance learner hoping to become a teaching assistant. But first of all, Gurpreet, if I can come to you first. And I suppose, how much of a surprise is it that it's the youngest and the newest employees who are the first to go? Is that always the way?
Yeah, I mean, young people always suffer more than the broader population during economic downturns. And you've mentioned some of the reasons just now, but they tend to be the least kind of experienced and valuable to companies. So they're the easiest ones to get rid of. But then there's also the fact that employers are not only getting rid of staff, it's that they start stopping recruitment. And when you've got about 800,000 new school leavers looking for jobs, and there are no jobs available and vacancies are shrinking, they're the ones that suffer most. So if you look after the financial crisis a decade ago, we saw youth unemployment peak at about 21%. And this all sounds terrible, and we assume that the economy recovers and these young people get jobs, but the knock-on effects, the scarring, really does last for many years to come. These young people, then their earnings never really catch up, or it takes a good few years, often 5 or 6 years, for earnings to catch up. And obviously the improvements, the career enhancements, climbing up the career ladder, that all takes a step back. It all suffers during economic downturns.
Now, we're talking about this being an economic downturn. It's an economic downturn for a very unusual reason, as opposed to some of our other economic downturns, which have come on a bit slower. I think that's the main thing, isn't it? Is that in general you can see the trend going, and so therefore make a move. Is there any hope on the horizon that employers will bounce back quite quickly from this and hire again?
Yes, there is, but there's no doubt that young people in particular are going to need a huge amount of support from the government. And we're hoping that Rishi Sunak, when he unveils his budget on March the 3rd, this is kind of the ONS figures released this week, might give him, the extra push needed to provide support for young people when it comes to training skills and getting into jobs. And I think what's really unique about this crisis is, as you said, it sort of happened very abruptly. But the legacy of the previous crisis is also feeding its way through, because after the last financial crisis, what we saw happen was that young people who couldn't get jobs, graduates in particular, who couldn't get jobs in, say, accounting or banking or law graduate schemes, they started spending more and more time working in hospitality and retail. So these young people now make up a huge proportion of the workforce in retail and hospitality. And that kind of gives you an indication of why they're struggling more than other parts of the population. So it's not just a case of, opening up the economy and having a big bounce back. It's going to be, how do we support those sectors in particular? Because as we know, this is a sectoral crisis where young people are disproportionately employed. And so it's going to have to be about the hospitality and the retail sectors.
And we haven't even mentioned Brexit. Does that have any effect, or is that a much smaller effect on balance?
Well, we don't know yet. We still don't know the impact of Brexit and how it's working its way through the economy. I think we're going to have to wait and see how the two interact. But certainly the Bank of England, in its most recent economic forecast, said what's going to be really interesting about this crisis is that Brexit and the pandemic, the COVID, are hitting different parts of the economy. So I think when it comes to young people, it's those sectors where they're disproportionately represented, hospitality and retail. It's very much a pandemic-induced crisis for them.
Gurpreet, thank you very much. Gurpreet Nawan, economics correspondent at The Times. Well, I mentioned Hannah Walton. She's 21 and she's hoping to become a teaching assistant. And Hannah, good afternoon to you. First of all, is a teaching assistant what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I have a couple of different passions. Being around education and young people and working with them to kind of influence their life-making decisions, kind of making sure that they have the skills and abilities and support to go into whatever they want to do in the future. That's kind of the area that I hope to go into. And around the time of the pandemic starting, teaching assistant jobs were still around, so they were kind of more the jobs that I was tempted to apply to, try to apply to. But as always, all of the different sectors have been impacted, particularly education as well. So it's very difficult, but hopefully in the future I will be able to go into that sector when it all opens up and is available again.
So how difficult has the past year been then for you and for those that you know?
It definitely depends on individual circumstances. So personally, I have other factors that have influenced alongside COVID, such as mental health conditions and the fact that I'd previously been out of work due to stress the year beforehand. So kind of last year was the year that I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll ease myself back into work, start taking some new steps in my career journey. And then obviously COVID happened and it just kind of took over everything. And it definitely made it incredibly difficult to get into any sort of sector. Like previously mentioned, hospitality and retail are mostly the only sectors that are available to young people at the moment because of everything being closed or restricted. I have friends who there's one friend in particular who has trained as a outdoor activity instructor, and the entire industry is shut down currently, and they don't have the necessary skills to go into other industries and sectors. So it's a real struggle. Unless you're specifically trained in certain things, employers just don't seem to want to hire young people at the moment.
What would you like to hear then from our gurus? What would be a really big help? And I will ask one of them. So one of them is a graduate recruitment agency and the other one works with the Young Women's Trust. What question would you like answering?
I mean, obviously it's hard to answer any question at the moment. But I suppose, what would your advice be to young people who are desperate to try and, because we don't want to be sat around doing nothing. We want to engage and be active and be productive. What would your advice be to young people who are really struggling to get involved in anything?
Right. So really it's a case of saying, what should you be doing now to give yourself a really good sprint start once you're on the blocks, I suppose. Is that it in a nutshell? Okay. Well, if I address that to Claire Donaldson, who's head of people ops at Give Grad a Go, a graduate recruitment agency. Claire, can I ask for your thoughts on that? And then I'll come to Erica.
Yeah, no, of course. So, firstly, hi, Penny. Hi, Hannah. And Hannah, I'm sorry to hear that obviously you are having a bit of a difficult time of it, and hopefully you can share some positivity to help with what you've been asking. And I think definitely on the point of how can I be more, I suppose, productive right now, we suggest, boost your CV where you can. And we know that might not be kind of full-time employment if you are finding it tricky to get those roles. But there are some amazing initiatives that people have been doing over lockdown, whether it's starting kind of online businesses, could be anything, clothes selling or volunteering, helping with charities, fundraising, stuff that you can do maybe for your local community as well. Doesn't have to be something kind of concrete, but, supporting neighbours, people that, maybe still be shielding, you need to help them with shopping and things like that. For any employer, they'd be going, wow, fair enough, you've really gone out there, you've put your kind of mindset there, you've gone out and challenged yourself in different ways, which looks brilliant. But also there's lots of online free courses, whether it's more coding, HR, finance, whatever you might be interested in. You can boost your CV in that way, and it also keeps your mind quite active. So there are a couple of ways that I'd suggest. As well as that, make sure you're on LinkedIn, you're signing up with recruiters, you're contacting hiring managers, you're putting yourself out there, which can be a little bit unnatural, and unfortunately you may get a couple of pushbacks if people aren't getting back to you. But you're only going to know if you're talking to the right people and taking the time to really research what you want to get into and making those connections. So they would be my main bits. But Hannah, please feel free. We can have a chat after, and we can try and make a more tailored plan if that helps.
Hannah, that's very handy. I would take Claire up on that. Erica, if I can ask you for your thoughts on that.
Hi. I really feel that Claire kind of covered everything. Certainly, the conversations that we've been having at the Young Women's Trust are a lot of people coming and saying, I don't really know what I want to do. So a real starting point I would really encourage is for people who are on the edge and maybe they're still figuring things out, or they haven't fully decided what they want, to really understand what they are looking for, what kind of career they might be interested in, and really, as Claire said, building up those networks, doing the research, finding out what's out in the world, because it's really easy to go in right at the beginning, not really know what's happening. And volunteering, as Claire said, is a wonderful way of starting to get a better picture around what's out in the world, but also building our own CVs.
I was just about to say, it actually gives you something to put on your CV, if nothing else.
Exactly.
Now, I've got a question. This is a tweet from Matthew, who says, I've concerns as a higher education teacher for students currently training to graduate into the dance world. Will there be jobs available? How long will it take for the industry to get back to a place where employment is bountiful? Also, a lot of performing artists work as freelancers. Now, if I can come to you, Claire, on this, because actually it's not just about graduating into the dance world or the world of the arts, is it? In actual fact, there are, well, we've already talked about the hospitality sector. We haven't even mentioned the travel sector, all of these sectors which are, they're exciting jobs when they're there, aren't they, Claire? So I suppose that is a big question, is will it get back to a place where employment is bountiful, and how long before it happens?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be able to wave a magic wand and make that happen already. I think, again, it's stories like that which just show, someone's clearly showing, going with their passion and having a job within the arts, which they physically can't do. I mean, with the roadmap ahead that we've got in place, hopefully more kind of performance-based stuff will be opening up towards the end of this year. And I have everything crossed that does happen. I think what we've learned from the pandemic is there's been so many creative ways of teaching and kind of involving people in the arts community, but via online, which I know as kind of an avid theatre lover, that is not the same. But putting on performances, virtual, getting people to kind of support and pay there, or doing kind of, if it is on the dance front as well, doing kind of sessions and teaching courses that people can pay for. So again, the professional is being able to make an income, but also people are benefiting. Maybe it's in their front room to begin with, but 6 months down the line, hopefully that does open up more doors and we can actually get back on with normal life, I'd say.
And I suppose the point is, Erica, is that it's not their fault about the pandemic and the economic situation, is it? There's nothing to be ashamed of that you haven't got anything on your CV because it's been a year of stasis.
No, of course, absolutely. And something that we will also talk about is personal projects. People need to feel a sense of progress and a sense of purpose. So people actually getting involved in their own interests, their own projects, their own like mini quests. So people suddenly deciding that they want to learn more about their own areas, like local areas, and learning all the streets, or people picking up the ukulele that's gathering dust in the corner of the room. So, or learning an area that maybe they wanted to study for years, but they haven't really got around to it, and suddenly like picking up those books about Greek mythology and actually kind of creating balance in life, that it's not all about work, and it will never always be about work. And people can get really stressed out thinking they need to spend 8 hours a day looking for a job, even though there aren't that many, and actually going, we can work hard, we can spend some time doing the job searching and updating our CVs, but we also need to rest, and we need to look after ourselves, and we need to stay resilient. And we can learn about it. People like baking has become a really big thing, or people learning how to knit or crochet or arts and crafts, or people designing their own little projects, or as Claire said, starting little businesses on the side. And these are other ways that we can look after ourselves, and we can make the process maybe not fun, but have elements of fun and self-care in other ways in our day.
Now, Hannah, I don't know whether you do have a ukulele. Actually, I also don't know whether we need any more people playing ukuleles in the world. But anyway, is that at all helpful? And what both Erica and Claire have just said.
Absolutely. Funny enough, I just bought my boyfriend a ukulele.
Oh no!
For his birthday. That's brilliant. Yeah, I definitely think that all that advice will help so many young people. I completely resonate with that. I've been volunteering as much as I physically can. I've set up my own organisation to help students. I'm doing everything that they've suggested. So I definitely believe that their advice is perfect. And for the situation, obviously there's not much we can control, but if we can create our own opportunities and develop in that way, then maybe there'll be more opportunities for other people in the future.
If I come back to you, Claire, because before we all got shut down, I'm a member of this charity which goes into schools and goes and gives talks about really, it was about my career path as much as anything else. And the one thing that I have always said is it doesn't matter who you speak to, just speak to people, because you never know where the connections are going to come as you go through life. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. There is, no better advice than that. I think it's, again, the scary thought is networking. And I think people are often think, I don't want to, let's say, pester someone or put my name out there, but you're not, because everyone's doing it and you may as well jump on that as well. And I think having, let's say, as I said before, the LinkedIn profile, having it up to date, connecting with hiring managers, connecting with, companies that you like the look of, being able to kind of follow that. And yes, there may be a conversation that you have with someone which doesn't really lead anywhere, but 2 months down the line, that same person can go, oh, actually, I had a really good chat with Hannah, and she was looking into this sector. I wonder if I've still got her contact details. And yes, that might not happen all the time, but it's those pieces that are only going to happen if you make that conversation start to begin with. So yeah, definitely agree with that. And on that note, I think it's important for people to realise that when you are applying to jobs, yes, there are job adverts online which you apply to, and obviously apply to them, but don't be afraid to send a speculative email, to the careers address or whatever's relevant for the company, to just say, hey, came across the website, really love the look of your company, you've got my CV attached, I'm looking for a role in this sector. Because again, so many clients that we work with have hired people, not because they've got a role live and they're recruiting for it, is because they've seen someone that looks brilliant, they've been proactive enough to actually reach out directly, and that's ended up winning them the job. So just all avenues, just go for it is what I'd suggest.
And also not only networking with people that you think might become useful, but also just frankly anybody. I think you never know whether you're suddenly going to decide, for example, whether the career that you've chosen is something that you've now decided you're going to change or adapt or or go a completely different way, and you never know whether you've got somebody whose name is there, somebody whose email, and you can go, do you know what, I've been doing this, and can I please come and just have a chat. Obviously, this isn't a time when we will be able to come and have a chat. Erica, I suppose the other part of this is from businesses, and if a business is listening to this and thinking, oh, do you know what, Hannah sounds like the kind of person we'd like to hire. How would you go about making sure that you stand out?
Beautiful question. Something we work a lot with our young women is in really helping them uncover their skills and strengths. What have you done? What do you already have to offer? And sometimes people have jobs already, as we've said, hospitality, retail, but sometimes from studies or extracurricular activities or volunteering, and really helping the young people recognize what they've done. It's really easy for people to go, I don't know, I just did. I just worked in a shop. And once you start pulling out, well, okay, you have people skills, but what did you do? How did you do that? How did you problem solve? How did you help them when they had a problem? How did you help them when they were angry? And as soon as you start pulling out, people really get to recognize what they have to offer. And that comes into then helping people recognize their confidence and recognize that they can probably handle a new role, and combined with training that they'll settle in and they'll be okay, and that helps them show up better to actually apply for a role because they believe they can do it, but also helps them in interviews as well. So really understanding your skills and strengths can be powerful here.
Hannah, I'm just wondering if you found anywhere that's been really useful online, for example, to give you a bit of confidence and to keep your spirits up.
So I've mostly been, as most young people, I've been scrolling across social media a lot recently, and I find that following people that are in the industry that you're looking to go into or maybe a little bit interested in, following them, keeping tabs on what they're doing, because they usually post, I know many teachers and everything post events that they're going to that may be targeted at young people looking to go into certain sectors, and just kind of keeping an eye on maybe like Eventbrite events that are going on just lots of different things that you can get involved in. Yeah.
Okay. And are you, by the way, I didn't ask you, are you thinking of taking up the ukulele as well?
I think I might have to borrow it every now and again just to give it a little go, but I'm more of a piano type of person.
Claire and Erica, we haven't even talked about the role of social media. I mean, you mentioned LinkedIn, but social media elsewhere. So, for example, following people on social media sites that are in the kind of area that you're thinking of is presumably incredibly important. If I can ask you, Claire, first, and then Erica.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think any knowledge that you can gain from social media sites will benefit you, just in terms of understanding, is this the right path for me and what do I know about this sector? But also when you do land that interview, being able to show that you've actually got wider knowledge about everything. So yeah, as you've mentioned, LinkedIn's the main one, but equally, Twitter, social media platforms, Instagram, there's so much, TikTok even, there's plenty of we have a TikTok. Companies are trying to advance and actually appeal to the markets that they're trying to attract a lot more. And the more that you read around that, the better you're going to understand, and also the confidence. And it's a good talking point. It's stuff that you can then feed off, as I said, in interviews, but also it might direct you to realise, maybe this isn't quite the direction for me. So use it to as much to your advantage as possible, really, and will give you a really clear idea of the next step.
Claire, I honestly thought that TikTok was entirely filled by people doing mad things, often quite a lot of dancing. I'm just wondering what on earth you actually put on TikTok.
Some very funny videos from the marketing team, but I'd probably, LinkedIn maybe for more career guidance and TikTok for a bit of light relief, I think.
Erica, if I can ask the same question as you, any particular place that you think apart from LinkedIn?
Yes, so obviously using direct networks, people we've known previously, but they've just kind of lingered in our world on social media. We might not contact them, but suddenly we know what people are doing. So if there are questions that you have and someone's in that field or in that area, or people you want to reach out to find out what they do, can be great places to just connect with people you already know. We don't even need to start setting up contacts, we already know them, and people are really helpful. And then places that act like forums, so Facebook groups act like forums where people are willing to answer our questions. They'll sometimes even go out of their way to find answers for us as well. So being able to really use these spaces to gain that knowledge.
That's brilliant. Hannah, let's keep in touch, and let us know if you actually if you get a job and how it all goes in the future. Hannah Walton, Claire Donaldson, who's head of People Ops at Give Grad a Go, a graduate recruitment agency, and Erica Scarth, career resilience coach working with the Young Women's Trust. Thank you, all of you, for contributing. Also, thank you to Gurpreet Narwan, who we spoke to at the beginning.